Hello, it's such a blustery day here today. We're in the middle of January and I'm just about to go for a little walk in the woods behind my allotment. There's still so much wild food that can be found, so come with me and we'll see what we can find. So this is the woods behind my allotments. You can see the gates just there. And it's a lovely little woodland, full of wild garlic in the spring. This is a lovely little plant that always brightens up the forest floor. It's golden saxophage, and this little thing's edible. Let me show you. So this is golden saxophage, and the leaves grow in opposite pairs, and it has cute little yellow flowers that are quite indistinct. I usually find it by streams, and this grows in like a mat along the forest floor. It loves shady, damp soils, and when you're harvesting, you'll often find bits of soil and things on the plant from where it's washed up onto the leaves and stems. It has tiny little hairs on the leaves, but this doesn't take away anything from its edibility. I've just found some red dead nettle, also called purple dead nettle, and this is in the mint family. You can tell it's in the mint family because it has a square stem like all other members of the mint family. Just roll it in between your fingers and you'll feel that it's got edges to it. And it's also got these beautiful purple flowers that are kind of like pea-shaped flowers, but much smaller. I don't think my camera's going to focus, but it's got little red dots on the inside of it. And these contain nectar, and they're actually quite sweet. You can add the tops and the flowers to salads and stews and soups. You can chop up the stems and use those for soups as well. They're fairly low growing, but in some cases they can reach up to 8 to 10 inches tall, sometimes even taller. These are highly nutritious and they're really great in salads, but because their leaves are quite fuzzy, they are best mixed in with other leaves and wild greens. All of the spring flowers are starting to come out and the seedlings. It's such a lovely time of year. The anticipation of spring. These wrinkly little things here are called jelly ears, and these are an edible mushroom, and these are actually a bit they're already quite dried out. You can see the ones down here that are already pretty crispy, and you can still harvest these because usually you dehydrate jelly ears anyway before cooking. When you cook with these fresh in the pan, they do explode and spit back at you, so you need to be a bit careful cooking these fresh. But I generally dry these, and then these can be added to any sorts of stocks and soups and things like that. So I've actually made with these before, like a Forage Turkish delight, and I soaked the jelly ears in a rose liqueur that I made by steeping in rose petals into a vodka, and then I just soaked these overnight, let them plump up into the alcohol, and then I dipped them into dark chocolate, and it made a really nice kind of like Turkish delight. But these are often used in stir fries. The only thing that really looks like jelly ear, or can be mistaken for it really, are the Peziza species, grow upright in a cup, whereas jelly ear, you will always find them growing downwards. Peziza aren't veiny, and these have kind of like a vein to them when they start to dry out, which does resemble ear, which is why they're called jelly ear or wood ear. These are quite a cool little mushroom that you can find pretty much all year round, often on elder. Amongst this ivy down here, I've just spotted some Woodhavens, Geum urbanum because it grows in cities as well as hedges, gardens, parks. If you've probably seen this in your garden before, it's got 3 leaves that kind of look like a strawberry leaf, and it's also called Herb Bennett, and the roots have got a really delicious kind of clovey, cinnamony taste to them. The leaves are trifoliate, which means they have 3 leaflets, and further down the stem you'll often see pairs of leaves on one side of the stem. The leaves have fine hairs underneath. Let me see if I can pick some off to show you. They've got fuzzy hairs on the underside. Don't know if my camera's going to pick that up, but it might do. And this is a member of the rose family. The whole plant of this is actually edible. The leaves can be dried and crushed and used as a kind of seasoning, but it's actually the roots that are the most commonly and widely used. And an interesting fact about this is before we started importing herbs in England, Woodhavens were dug up, dried and powdered and used as a kind of cinnamon and clove spice substitute. So this was actually used in all of our desserts and spices and stuff long before cinnamon came into the UK. So once this all gets cleaned up, I can show you what the roots look like, and they grow on kind of rhizomes, so these roots will send off other patches of root like this, and then this will create a new plant. So I'll just pop that one back in there, that can grow a new plant, and we'll take this and clean it up. So when you crush these roots, they give off a really strong clove type scent, and they actually have the same oils as actual clove, which has the same medicinal properties. So you can actually use the same way as you'd use clove oil for toothaches and things like that. So it's these roots here that smell really strongly of clove and cinnamon, and this is what we'll dry out and use. So I'll pop this in the basket as well. So as I said, all of the plants edible, from the roots, the stems, the leaves, and medicinally you can use this the same as clove oil, so it's a really good mouthwash, it's antiseptic. But if you are just looking to use it as like a spice or as a seasoning, another really good thing to do is to steep the roots in milk and make kind of like a forage chai tea. It's really nice. See what else we can find. I've just found some very small and very much eaten velvet shanks. These are a really, really lovely edible mushroom. And what's great about velvet shanks is that they can survive being completely frozen. So you can find these all through the winter months when there's not many other mushrooms about. They have quite like a sweet kind of flavour that lends itself quite well to lots of different types of sweet and savoury recipes. So velvet shanks are a good one to find on your winter walks at the minute. See if I can find a better patch. Actually down here I've just noticed some little tiny baby cleaver seedlings, so I'm just going to go and see if I can find anything bigger than these to harvest. So I can only seem to find baby cleavers, so I'm not going to harvest any of these today, but I will tell you a little bit about them because they are one of my favourite plants and they're often very overlooked. So you're probably all familiar with cleavers, these sticky plants that we normally stick to our friends' backs in school, or you might often pick out the little seed burrs from your pet's fur later on in the summer as well. But cleavers are highly medicinal and they've got great amounts of vitamin C. Similar to most wild greens, they can be added to anything from soups to stews to salads, and they can be steeped in water to make quite a nutritious, kind of like cucumber water, but cleavers water. So here are some dried cleavers from last year, and you can see these little fuzzy seed heads. But an interesting fact about cleavers is they're actually in the coffee family, and these seeds can be used, dried and turned into kind of like a coffee substitute. The young stems like these can be boiled or even just eaten fresh and added to soups and salads as a little garnish. And it can also be used as a salve for things like eczema and psoriasis. It's really, really good for treating skin conditions. And next to this actually is baby Jack by the hedge. This is another one of my favourite spring greens, and you can eat these raw. And if you have trouble finding wild garlic, you can almost certainly find Jack by the hedge, which is garlic mustard, and it has a much milder flavour, but similar to that of wild garlic, and you can use it in the same sorts of recipes as well. It's a really delicious plant that you can recognise instantly by the smell. So anything that smells of onion or garlic in the UK is actually edible. So you just crush it, give it a little smell, and if it smells like onion or garlic, then you are good to go. In the summer it has white flowers, little clusters of white flowers that are edible as well, and they're actually really, really good to be kind of like tempura'd. It's a really nice little side dish. Another good one to keep your eye out if you're going for walks in parks and gardens and things like that is bay shrubs and bay trees. So if you're familiar with bay leaves in cooking, then you'll know what to look for. They've got glossy leaves that are quite firm, and they've got a matte back. They've got a rib that runs all the way down the centre. This is another really great wild edible, and this is Primrose, and it gets its name from prima rose, meaning first rose, because it's often one of the first plants that flowers in late winter, early spring, with these beautiful yellowy cream coloured flowers that make an absolutely delicious panna cotta when the flowers are steeped in a sugar to make a syrup. But the flowers can also be candied and used as edible cake decorations, but the leaves are a really good wild edible and can kind of be used as a lettuce replacement in salads, and also steamed and chopped up like spinach as well. I've just found a bit more down here with the buttercup. You can see all the young shoots just starting to come through. And if you are eating the leaves, this is the best time to eat them, when they're nice and tender and young like this. Spruce shoots are all starting to come through now, and these are delicious just eaten raw on their own, but you can also make the spruce needles into a lovely tea as well. So you just steep the leaves or the needles into water for about 5 minutes, strain it, and then drink the liquid, and it's a lovely kind of almost citrusy, earthy flavour that's really, really, really good for you. I think brambles are one of those things that nobody really looks for until the autumn when the berries come through. But actually, all of the plant is edible, and the roots, the leaves and the stems were once considered really, really medicinal. So the stems obviously have to be stripped of their thorns before you eat them. And then you kind of blanch them, fry them up with some onion and veg stock, and it makes quite a delicious little side dish. And in folk medicine too, the roots and the leaves were used for things like coughs and colds, sore throats and things like that. So it's got quite a long history of medicinal use, aside from just the delicious fruits that it gives us in the summer and autumn time. And also, basket weavers will know that bramble makes one of the best weaving materials as well. It dries out and is really, really flexible to use. So it's got a lot of uses, our dear bramble. And lastly, we've got nettle, and despite its quite menacing appearance, nettle is a really delicious and highly nutritious wild edible that can be used in all manner of things, from soups to stews, and it can even be made into nettle beer as well. It's a really, really good wild edible that is probably one of the most nutritious wild foods by weight that you can find on our wee shores here in the UK. Incredible little plant.
Right, well it's getting pretty dark now, so I'm going to head back home. I've only been out for about an hour, but it was quite a late forage today. I'm pretty stoked with what I've managed to gather. It's mostly just a big basket of bay leaves and Woodhaven roots as well, so I'm going to head back to the kitchen and see what I can make out of them.